The city of angels, Los Angeles, rarely slept. Its perpetual hum of traffic, the distant wail of sirens, the glow of neon signs painting the night sky, it was a vibrant, chaotic symphony. But beneath the glittering surface, a chilling silence was slowly spreading, a quiet dread that began to grip the sprawling metropolis like an unseen, venomous fog. It started subtly, a missing person report here, an unsolved disappearance there. But as the numbers steadily climbed, a pattern, terrifying in its elusive nature, began to emerge. 32 young women, all gone without a trace, swallowed by the glittering abyss of the city. Detective Isabella Izzy Garcia, a woman whose sharp intellect was matched only by her unwavering tenacity, stared at the updated whiteboard in the cluttered task force room. Each photograph pinned to it represented a life extinguished, a family shattered. Their faces, a mosaic of youth and promise, stared back at her, demanding answers that the LAPD seemed increasingly incapable of providing. Izzy ran a hand through her short, practical hair, the exhaustion evident in the faint lines around her sharp, intelligent eyes. It had been 18 months since the first disappearance, and they were no closer to identifying the perpetrator. No forced entry, no struggle, no witnesses, no discernible motive. Sergeant Miller, a grizzled veteran whose cynicism was a shield against the horrors he witnessed daily, grumbled from across the room. It's like they just vanished into thin air. Izzy tapped a pen against the whiteboard, her gaze lingering on the victim profiles. Young, attractive, intelligent, and independent, all in their early to mid-20s. Professionals, students, aspiring artists. They came from diverse backgrounds, but they shared an uncanny similarity in their personal lives: active social media presences, comfortable with technology, and a propensity for solo activities like late-night jogs, art gallery openings, or quiet evenings at home. He's not breaking down doors, Sergeant, Izzy mused, her voice thoughtful. He's gaining entry, and he's doing it without a trace. That suggests either a highly sophisticated method or a willing entry. Willing entry? Miller scoffed. You think these women just invited their killer in for tea? Not tea, Miller. Something else. Something that bypasses their natural caution. Something that allows him to control the situation from the very beginning. Izzy walked over to a map of Los Angeles, studded with red pins marking the locations of the disappearances. The clustering was subtle, but it was their areas with high-rise apartments, luxury condominiums, and gated communities. Places where security was ostensibly tight, but privacy was paramount. The media, initially slow to pick up on the pattern, had recently exploded with fear-mongering headlines. The ghost of LA, the vanishing angel, the city's silent hunter. Public panic was escalating, putting immense pressure on the LAPD. Chief Davies, a man more concerned with public image than actual results, had formed the elite task force, a diverse group of detectives, forensic analysts, and tech specialists, all handpicked for their expertise. Izzy, known for her sharp analytical mind and uncanny intuition, was its unofficial lead. Their initial profiling suggested a meticulous, highly intelligent individual. The lack of forensic evidence was astounding: no fingerprints, no DNA, no discernible fiber traces. It was as if the killer wore an invisible suit, leaving no mark on the physical world. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated, precise operation. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a brilliant but eccentric forensic psychologist brought in by the FBI, had her own unsettling theories. This isn't about rage or sexual gratification in the conventional sense. She had explained during an early briefing, her voice low and hypnotic. This is about control. Absolute, undeniable control. He's not just taking their lives. He's erasing their existence. He leaves no body because the body is evidence. He wants to leave nothing but absence. So, he's disposing of the bodies in an elaborate way? Izzy had asked. Or he's doing something else with them. Dr. Vance had replied, her eyes distant, as if peering into the killer's mind. Something that fits his need for perfection, for total control. He's not just a murderer. He's an architect of absence. The task force started by dissecting the victims' digital footprints. All 32 women had active social media profiles, used dating apps, and engaged in online communities. They were digital natives, their lives intertwined with the virtual world. Izzy suspected this was the key. He's not meeting them in bars or on the street, Izzy theorized to her team. He's meeting them online. He's building a persona, carefully crafting an identity that appeals to them, that makes them drop their guard. They spent countless hours sifting through social media posts, dating app conversations, and email exchanges, looking for a common denominator. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. The sheer volume of digital data was overwhelming. Then came the 40-year-old cold case from New York. A seemingly unrelated disappearance of a young woman, strikingly similar to their current victims, but dismissed at the time as a runaway. A young detective, now a retired but still sharp-minded FBI agent named Arthur Jenkins, had seen the uncanny similarities and sent the file to the LA task force. The similarities were chilling. A highly intelligent, independent young woman, a pristine apartment with no forced entry, and an absolute lack of forensic evidence. The only difference was that this victim had left behind a single, cryptic note on her nightstand. He knew. He knew what? Izzy wondered aloud, staring at the faded photograph of the New York victim. He knew something personal, something intimate about her, Eris had speculated. Something that allowed him to gain her trust, to bypass her defenses. He preys on loneliness, on a desire for connection, on the very human need to be understood. The concept of a killer operating for 40 years, adapting his methods, moving across the country, yet maintaining the same elusive signature, was almost impossible to comprehend. It spoke of a methodical, patient, and terrifyingly intelligent mind. They started building a psychological profile based on this extended timeline. This was not a young, impulsive killer. This was a seasoned predator, a master of manipulation, a ghost in the digital realm. He would be highly educated, charming, and possess an almost encyclopedic knowledge of human psychology. He would be a chameleon, able to blend seamlessly into any social setting, to become whoever his victims needed him to be. The breakthrough, ironically, came from a seemingly insignificant detail. One of the victims, a meticulous aspiring journalist, had kept a detailed journal of her online interactions. Hidden deep within a cloud storage account, they found a series of encrypted messages. It took their best tech analyst, a quiet, brilliant young woman named Chloe, days to decrypt them. The messages revealed a carefully orchestrated online courtship with a man who called himself Elias Vance. He was charming, witty, incredibly intelligent, and seemed to possess an almost uncanny understanding of her deepest fears and aspirations. He presented himself as a brilliant but reclusive software engineer, working on cutting-edge AI, someone who understood the complexities of the digital world. He slowly, subtly, dismantled her guard, eroding her caution with intellectual conversations, shared vulnerabilities, and a profound sense of connection. The name Elias Vance sent a jolt through Izzy. Elias Vance. A chilling echo of Elias Thorne, the Midlothian butcher, and Dr. Eleanor Vance, the psychologist on their team. Coincidence? Or something far more sinister? Chloe, her fingers flying across the keyboard, began to cross-reference the name. No public records for an Elias Vance matching the profile. No social media. No digital footprint whatsoever. The man was a ghost, a construct of pure digital fabrication. He's using a series of disposable online identities, Chloe explained, her voice tight with a mixture of frustration and awe. He creates a new persona for each victim, tailors it to their interests, their desires. He's a digital shapeshifter. The next step was to track the IP addresses used in the encrypted communications. It was a painstaking process, leading them through a labyrinth of proxy servers, VPNs, and encrypted networks. But Chloe was relentless. Finally, after weeks of relentless tracking, she narrowed down a series of recurring IP addresses that led back to a secluded, high-tech property in the Hollywood Hills. The property was a fortress, surrounded by high walls, advanced surveillance systems, and a meticulously manicured landscape. It belonged to a shell corporation, the true owner obscured behind layers of legal obfuscation. It was the lair of a ghost. The raid was planned with meticulous precision. The tactical unit, briefed on the suspect's presumed intelligence and caution, approached the compound under the cover of a moonless night. Izzy insisted on being part of the entry team, her gut instinct screaming that this was it. As the team breached the perimeter, the silence within the compound was unnerving. No alarms, no immediate resistance. It was as if the house was waiting for them. The interior was modern, minimalist, and eerily sterile. Every surface gleamed. Every object seemed perfectly placed. It was the home of a mind that valued order above all else. They found him in a hidden, soundproofed room in the basement. Not Elias Vance, the reclusive software engineer, but a man in his late 60s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that held a disturbing, detached intelligence. He was surrounded by a dizzying array of sophisticated computer equipment, holographic displays, and a vast collection of anatomical models, each one exquisitely crafted, eerily reminiscent of Elias Thorne's dissection art. He didn't resist. He simply looked up from the holographic projection he was studying, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Detective Garcia," he said, his voice calm, cultured, and devoid of surprise. "You're just in time. The next phase of my work is nearing completion." Izzy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air of the room. This wasn't just a killer. He was a self-proclaimed artist, a meticulous architect of human absence. And his confidence, his almost serene acceptance of capture, was far more terrifying than any struggle. "Who are you?" Izzy demanded, her voice tight. The man tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with a disconcerting amusement. "I am merely a student of the human condition, detective, a seeker of ultimate truth. You may call me Professor Alastair Finch." And then he said something that solidified Izzy's chilling suspicion, a name that made her blood run cold. "Though some of my earlier work was attributed to a lesser mind, a man named Elias Thorne, a regrettable misunderstanding, I assure you, he was merely an apprentice, a crude imitator. My true symphony, detective, is far more subtle, far more profound." Izzy stared at him, her mind reeling. Elias Thorne, the Midlothian butcher, was not the true architect of the original horrors. He was merely a pawn, a crude instrument in the hands of a far more sophisticated, far more terrifying intellect. Professor Alastair Finch, the ghost in the metropolis, the architect of absence, the man who had been operating for 40 years, leaving a trail of 32, perhaps more, vanished women in his wake. The true fiend had finally revealed himself, and the depth of his chilling brilliance was only just beginning to unfold. The quiet dread in Los Angeles was about to erupt into a storm of unfathomable proportions, as the world grappled with the terrifying reality of the Obsidian Mind. The capture of Professor Alastair Finch, the true architect behind the ghost of LA disappearances, ripped through the global consciousness like a seismic shockwave. The revelation that he was the mastermind, and Elias Thorne merely a derivative, a crude imitation of his art, sent shivers down the spines of law enforcement and the public alike. The media, hungry for every gruesome detail, dubbed him the Obsidian Mind, a chilling moniker that perfectly encapsulated his dark, impenetrable intellect. For Detective Izzy Garcia, the initial triumph of the arrest quickly gave way to a profound sense of foreboding. Alastair Finch was not like any other killer she had encountered. He was serene, almost philosophical in his confinement, treating his interrogations not as a means of extracting a confession, but as an opportunity for intellectual discourse, a platform to articulate his twisted worldview. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the FBI forensic psychologist, was immediately brought in, her expertise now more crucial than ever. She had, with chilling foresight, suspected a deeper, more profound intelligence at play, a meticulous mind behind the Midlothian butcher's crude theatrics. Now, facing Alastair Finch across the sterile interview room, she recognized a level of psychological sophistication that few, if any, serial killers possessed. "You've been very busy, Professor Finch," Dr. Vance began, her voice calm, carefully modulated. Finch, impeccably dressed even in a prison jumpsuit, offered a slight, almost imperceptible smile. Busy indeed, Doctor. The pursuit of truth, you see, is a lifelong endeavor. My work simply requires a unique methodology. A unique methodology that involved the abduction and presumed murder of over 30 women. Izzy interjected, her voice sharp with suppressed anger. Finch merely inclined his head. Presumed, detective. A crucial distinction. Absence, you see, is far more powerful than presence. A body leaves a tangible trace, a finite end. Absence, however, invites contemplation, endless speculation. It creates a vacuum that never truly fills. His words, delivered with a detached, almost academic tone, were chilling. He wasn't confessing, he was lecturing. He saw himself not as a murderer, but as an artist, a philosopher, a sculptor of the void. The interrogations became a complex psychological dance. Finch refused to directly admit to the murders or to reveal the fates of his victims. Instead, he would speak in elaborate metaphors, philosophical pronouncements, and scientific analogies, his intelligence a shield behind which he concealed the full horror of his actions. The human form, detective, is a marvel of biological engineering. Finch mused during one session, his gaze distant, as if observing a complex diagram in his mind. But it is also inherently flawed, susceptible to decay, emotion, and irrationality. My work is simply to refine, to demonstrate the inherent fragility, and to explore the limits of its deconstruction. Dr. Vance theorized that Finch was a disorganized perfectionist. His crimes were meticulously planned, digitally executed, and left no physical trace. But his true art lay in the psychological torment he inflicted, the agonizing uncertainty of the victims' families, the baffling elusiveness of his methods, the very absence he left behind. His background was a labyrinth of aliases and fabricated identities. He had attended multiple prestigious universities, earning advanced degrees in psychology, computer science, and even art history. He had worked as a freelance consultant, a visiting professor, a tech guru, chameleon-like existences that allowed him to move seamlessly through society, never leaving a deep footprint, always observing, always learning. He's a master of camouflage, Vance explained to Izzy and the task force. He preys on the modern condition, the anonymity of the online world, the craving for connection in an increasingly isolated society. He identifies a need, constructs the perfect persona to fulfill it, and then exploits that vulnerability. The discovery of his hidden lab in the Hollywood Hills revealed the chilling extent of his obsession. Beyond the sophisticated computer equipment and holographic displays, they found a vast library of anatomical texts, philosophical treatises on nihilism and existentialism, and disturbing journals filled with intricate designs and cryptic equations. And then there were the models, hundreds of them, not just the anatomical models found with the disappearance reports, but full-scale, incredibly lifelike human figures, meticulously crafted from various materials: resin, bone, even synthetic skin. Each figure was incomplete, missing a limb, a section of the torso, or a part of the head. And chillingly, each missing part corresponded to one of his victims. "He's building something?" Izzy whispered, staring at a partially completed female torso, the craftsmanship so exquisite it was almost disturbing. "A monument to his victims," Dr. Vance corrected, her voice strained. "A perverse tribute to his studies. He is not disposing of the bodies, detective. He is incorporating them into his art. He believes he is preserving their essence, elevating them beyond their mundane lives into something eternal." The implications were horrifying. Finch wasn't merely killing. He was dismembering, preserving, and incorporating human remains into his macabre sculptures. The absence he created was not merely a void, but a transformation, a grotesque transmogrification of his victims into his art. The police found enough evidence in his lab, combined with detailed notes and DNA analysis of trace human remains embedded in some of the unfinished models, to charge him with multiple counts of murder and desecration of human remains. The trial of Alastair Finch was a media circus of unprecedented scale. The details of his meticulous planning, his digital deceit, and the chilling artistry of his human sculptures captivated and repulsed the world. Finch remained impassive throughout, his demeanor calm, almost bored. He offered no defense, no apologies, only a series of enigmatic pronouncements that baffled the court and infuriated the victims' families. "My work is merely an exploration of truth, a dissection of reality," he stated during one of his rare, unsolicited addresses to the court. "The human form, in its fleeting existence, is a testament to impermanence. I merely accelerate the process, and in doing so, reveal the deeper, more profound beauty of its constituent parts." Dr. Vance's testimony was crucial. She meticulously dissected Finch's psychological profile, exposing his extreme narcissism, his profound lack of empathy, and his grand delusion that he was on a higher intellectual plane than the rest of humanity. She explained his art as a manifestation of his need for absolute control, his desire to impose order on what he perceived as the chaos of human existence. "He doesn't see them as individuals," Dr. Vance concluded, her voice firm, "but as raw materials for his philosophical inquiries. His crimes are not acts of violence in the traditional sense. They are acts of intellectual dominance, demonstrations of his perceived superiority over the very fabric of life and death." The jury, despite the lack of conventional bodies, was swayed by the overwhelming circumstantial evidence, Finch's chilling admissions, and the powerful psychological testimony. Alastair Finch was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life without parole. Yet, even in the Supermax prison, the Obsidian Mind continued his work. He was granted access to materials for art therapy, and with chilling precision, he began to craft new anatomical models, this time from clay and wood. His cell became a miniature workshop, filled with the unsettling echoes of his past atrocities. Izzy, exhausted but with a grim satisfaction, tried to move on. She had put the monster behind bars. She had brought a semblance of justice to the vanished women. But the image of Finch's serene face, his detached pronouncements, and the unsettling thought of his human sculptures haunted her dreams. Dr. Vance, however, found herself increasingly drawn to Finch, not as an academic subject, but as a chilling enigma she felt compelled to unravel. She continued to visit him, engaging him in complex philosophical debates, delving deeper into his twisted worldview. She believed that understanding Finch was understanding the ultimate depths of human depravity, a key to preventing future horrors. During one of their visits, Finch looked at Dr. Vance with a strange, knowing glint in his eyes. "You understand, don't you, Doctor?" he said, his voice soft, almost conspiratorial. "The true nature of my work, the ephemeral nature of existence. You are drawn to it, aren't you? To the raw, unfiltered truth that I reveal." Dr. Vance felt a tremor of unease. "I am drawn to understanding the darkness, Professor. To containing it." Finch chuckled softly. "Containment is an illusion, Doctor. Truth, like water, finds its way through cracks, through the smallest crevices. My symphony, you see, is not bound by these walls. It is playing, perhaps, in the minds of those who now grasp its melody." And that was the chilling truth. Even locked away, Alastair Finch's ideas, his philosophy of absence and deconstruction, had begun to permeate the public consciousness. His trial, his chilling statements, his art, it had all been meticulously calculated to spread his message, to plant seeds of nihilism and detachment in receptive minds. The true legacy of Alastair Finch was not just the vanished women, but the chilling possibility that his ideology, his obsidian mind, had begun to inspire a new generation of disturbed individuals. He had not only murdered, he had indoctrinated. He had not only erased, he had, in his own perverse way, created. A few years later, a new series of disappearances began in disparate cities across the globe. The victims were diverse, but the pattern was eerily familiar. No forced entry, no struggle, no witnesses, and an absolute lack of forensic evidence. And then, the discovery. meticulously crafted anatomical models left at the scenes, each made from unique, unusual materials, and each missing a key component. And with them, notes, penned not in Finch's elegant script, but in varying hands, yet echoing his chilling philosophy. The human form, in its fleeting existence, is a testament to impermanence. We merely accelerate the process. Izzy Garcia, retired but still haunted, saw the news reports, the images of the new art pieces. A cold dread settled in her stomach. The obsidian mind, despite being caged, had successfully conducted his symphony from within. His architects of absence were now operating globally, inspired by his twisted vision. The echoes from the abyss were undeniable. The unfinished symphony of Alistair Finch, the true fiend, had finally begun to play on a global stage, a horrifying testament to the power of a truly intelligent and malevolent mind to transcend the very boundaries of confinement. The 30-plus enigma had evolved, and the world was now its chilling canvas. The global emergence of the architects of absence, disciples inspired by Alistair Finch's philosophy and methods, plunged the world into a new era of fear and uncertainty. What had begun as a localized terror in Los Angeles, then expanded to a national phenomenon with Elias Thorne, had now become a chilling, borderless threat. The news channels played endless loops of psychological profiles, frantic interviews with experts, and the haunting images of the meticulously crafted anatomical models left at crime scenes across continents. The obsidian mind, though imprisoned, had unleashed an ideological plague. Detective Izzy Garcia, now fully retired and living a quiet life far from the urban chaos, watched the news reports with a profound sense of despair. Her victory in apprehending Finch felt hollow, a temporary respite rather than a conclusive end. She had caught the composer, but his terrifying symphony was now being played by an unseen orchestra, its discordant notes echoing from the abyss. Dr. Eleanor Vance, still an active and highly respected profiler, found herself at the epicenter of this global crisis. The FBI formed an unprecedented international task force, bringing together law enforcement agencies, cybersecurity experts, and forensic psychologists from around the world. Eris Thorne, no longer just a profiler but a leading authority on Finch's mind, became a central figure, grappling with the monster he had helped create, or rather release. The new architects were diverse in their backgrounds and methods, yet unified by Finch's core philosophy. They targeted individuals based on unique attributes: a celebrated musician for her sense of harmony, a renowned architect for his understanding of structure, a quantum physicist for his grasp of unseen forces. Each victim was carefully chosen, abducted without a trace, and then memorialized through a new, grotesque art piece, an anatomical model crafted from unconventional materials, each one reflecting a piece of Finch's twisted truth. The models were more sophisticated, more varied than Finch's originals. One architect, in Berlin, crafted intricate skeletal structures from interwoven fibers that pulsed with a faint, bioluminescent glow, symbolizing the ephemeral nature of life. Another in Tokyo created exquisite, miniature human brains from solidified mercury, representing the fluidity of thought. Each piece was a disturbing testament to Finch's influence, a literal embodiment of his philosophy of deconstruction and transformation. Eris and Dr. Vance spent countless hours studying Finch's extensive writings, his philosophical treatises, and the thousands of pages of his psychological evaluations. They were looking for the score, the hidden instructions or subtle inspirations that had catalyzed this global phenomenon. He taught them how to see, Dr. Vance explained during a video conference with international agencies, her voice strained but clear. He didn't just instruct them in method, he instructed them in a worldview. He gave them permission to bypass conventional morality, to see human life as raw material for a higher understanding. Eris, his face etched with fatigue, nodded. He groomed them not just as criminals, but as artists, as philosophers. He appealed to their intellectual vanity, their desire to be part of something profound, something that transcended the mundane. The common thread among the architects was their exposure to Finch's case through the media, through true crime forums, or, chillingly, through direct correspondence. The FBI discovered that Finch, even within the confines of his supermax prison, had been communicating with a select group of pen pals, using a complex code embedded in seemingly innocuous letters. He had slowly, subtly indoctrinated them, turning them into his unwitting instruments. One of the captured architects, a former philosophy student from London named Marcus, was particularly chilling. He spoke of Finch with an almost religious fervor, quoting his philosophical pronouncements verbatim. "Professor Finch showed me the ultimate truth," Marcus stated calmly during his interrogation, "that the ego is an illusion, and the body merely a temporary vessel. He liberated me from the constraints of sentiment. My work is a tribute to his brilliance, a continuation of his grand experiment." The concept of a grand experiment sent shivers down Eris's spine. Finch wasn't just a serial killer. He was a self-proclaimed scientist of the human condition, his victims mere variables in his chilling equation. The International Task Force launched a global manhunt, utilizing advanced data analytics and predictive profiling to identify potential architects. They meticulously tracked online forums, dark web communities, and encrypted communication channels, searching for individuals who echoed Finch's philosophy, who showed an unhealthy fascination with his art. It was like chasing ghosts, a constant battle against an amorphous, ideological enemy. Izzy, despite her retirement, found herself drawn back into the fray. Eris, knowing her unparalleled intuition and her deep understanding of Finch's initial methods, often consulted her. She provided insights into the nuances of the digital hunt, the subtle psychological traps Finch would lay, and the vulnerabilities he would exploit. "He's still playing games, Eris," Izzy warned him over a secure line. "He's still trying to control the narrative, even from his cell. Don't let him get into your head." Eris, however, was already deep in Finch's labyrinthine mind. He had spent years studying the obsidian mind, and the line between understanding and obsession had grown dangerously thin. He found himself thinking like Finch, anticipating his moves, sometimes even admiring the sheer intellectual audacity of his crimes. He recognized the profound danger of this intellectual empathy, but he couldn't pull away. The task force eventually managed to dismantle several key cells of architects, saving numerous potential victims and bringing some closure to grieving families. But the true scope of Finch's influence remained elusive. How many individuals, inspired by his published philosophy and the pervasive media coverage, had begun their own experiments in secret without direct contact? The seeds of his evil had been sown, and they were continuing to germinate in the darkest corners of the human psyche. The climax of the global pursuit came with the discovery of the grand opus, a series of colossal, incomplete anatomical sculptures being constructed in an abandoned underground complex in rural Siberia. This was the ultimate realization of Finch's vision, a collective project undertaken by a particularly devoted group of architects. The sculptures, far larger and more ambitious than anything seen before, were designed to be a permanent, awe-inspiring monument to Finch's philosophy, a testament to the truth he had revealed. The raid on the Siberian complex was a massive, multinational operation, fraught with danger. Izzy, against all advice, insisted on being there, her veteran instincts screaming that this was the end game, the final act of Finch's terrifying symphony. As the tactical units breached the vast, cavernous space, they found the architects calmly working on their macabre masterpieces, seemingly oblivious to the armed presence. The air was thick with the scent of chemicals, plaster, and a faint, disturbing organic odor. The sculptures were grotesque, yet undeniably beautiful in their chilling precision, titanic human forms, meticulously rendered, but each missing vast sections, representing the absence and deconstruction that Finch championed. And then a chilling discovery. Embedded within the core of the largest sculpture, a giant, partially completed female torso, they found the perfectly preserved remains of Alistair Finch himself. His body, meticulously posed, was a final, shocking testament to his ultimate control, his final act of art. A note, carved directly into the hardened resin around his body, bore his familiar, elegant script: "The architect becomes the architecture." My symphony is complete. The truth, like my form, is now embedded within the very fabric of existence. Observe, learn, and remember, absence is the ultimate presence. The revelation sent shockwaves through the task force and then through the world. Alistair Finch had not merely continued his work from prison. He had meticulously planned his own death, orchestrating his escape and the grotesque transformation of his body into his final, ultimate art piece. He had escaped confinement, not through conventional means, but through an ultimate act of self-deconstruction, a final, chilling statement of his philosophy. Izzy stood before the colossal sculpture, a profound sense of exhaustion and grim horror washing over her. Finch had won. He had, in his own depraved way, achieved his twisted form of immortality. He had become the ultimate architect of absence. His body dissolving into his art, his philosophy continuing to reverberate through the minds of his disciples. Eris Thorne, seeing Finch's final masterpiece, felt a cold dread, a realization that he had underestimated the true depths of the obsidian mind. Finch had not merely been a subject of study. He had been a dark mirror, reflecting the fragility of their own understanding, the terrifying potential of an unbound intellect. He had shown them that true evil was not always loud or chaotic. Sometimes, it was quiet, intellectual, and terrifyingly precise. The International Task Force continued its work, but the pursuit of the architects of absence became an ongoing, seemingly endless battle. Finch's ideas, his symphony, had spread far and wide, influencing countless individuals, each one a potential new artist of absence. The 30-plus enigma had not ended with his death. It had merely transformed, evolving into a pervasive, ideological threat that defied conventional containment. Izzy Garcia, finally finding a semblance of peace in her solitude, still carried the scars of the obsidian mind. She knew that some evil could not be truly contained, that some dark melodies, once played, would echo eternally. The unfinished symphony of Alistair Finch, the high-IQ serial killer who had taken over 30 lives and then transcended his own mortality through an act of ultimate deconstruction, continued to play, a chilling reminder that the darkest corners of the human mind were far more vast and far more terrifying than anyone could ever imagine. The ghost in the metropolis had become a pervasive shadow, forever lurking in the collective consciousness, a testament to the enduring power of a truly twisted, brilliant, and utterly irredeemable fiend.